Welcome to the Leadership Expose podcast. This podcast is for purpose-driven leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business, and to create an impact in the lives of people all around them. Business and boardroom topics, trends, innovation, transformation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. There we go. In this episode, I'm delighted to have Adrienne Lloyd, founder of Optimize Healthcare LLC and Optimize Flow LLC, and she helps healthcare leaders and practice owners build top-tier organizations with empowered teams and optimized processes so they can decrease burnout and scale to serve more patients. We'll hear how Adrienne does this all with success and how health practitioners are benefiting from this approach. Adrienne, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Adrienne, just before we started the podcast, we were exchanging where we're based, and tell us a little bit more where you're based.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm based near Raleigh, North Carolina, in Chapel Hill. I've been back in North Carolina a little over 8 years, I guess, but have lived in Minnesota, Arizona, and Florida before kind of settling back to where I'm originally from, so near Raleigh.
So is Raleigh now final home base for you?
I don't know. I'm a
At
bit
least
of a
for now.
At least for now. Yeah, I'm a bit of a wandering spirit. So I like travel and new places. So kind of a hybrid approach maybe down the road. But for now I have kids, so I'm around here most of the time when I'm not speaking or traveling. So
Awesome. I know you touched on part of that journey, but keen to hear a little bit more about your personal journey and that intersection with your professional journey, and then we'll go into a little bit more details later on. But go on your journey, please.
Sure. So I've been in healthcare a little over 20 years. I started my career at UNC hospitals when I was finishing graduate school for healthcare administration, and then worked in pediatrics, the Children's Hospital, and then I started working at Mayo Clinic. So I was there in Minnesota, freezing, for 4 years, but I got a lot of great experience and to work with a lot of great people, and worked with radiology, OB, a variety of specialties. And then I spent another 6 years out in Scottsdale and Phoenix, Arizona, with the practice there, working with gastroenterology and radiology, but really serving in those roles as kind of chief executive officer for those practices, and really just looking a lot at standardization, optimization of processes across sites. We were trying to do a lot of work with integrating and improving the standard of care and experience for the patients and our physicians and our staff across all of our locations. So I got to work across sometimes 26 or more practices for the Mayo Clinic GI group, as an example, and just really focusing on creating that change, but that consistency. So that was fantastic. And then spent my last, then I moved back to North Carolina. I worked at Duke Health as the CEO of all the Duke ophthalmology practices. And so worked really closely with my physician leadership. We made a lot of changes. And one of the things that's happened kind of throughout my career is I've ended up in a lot of turnaround situations where we've got a lot of great people, but just people really not talking to each other, or not working, as well together as they should. And so really trying to build that alignment, engagement, something I've kind of found my passion for, but also a niche in, if you will. And so I do speaking and training around a variety of topics, but primarily that team engagement. And once the team's engaged, then you can really bring everyone to the table to make things better and wherever you need, so that you get towards that next level. And so really just excited to be doing that, and excited to be here with you today. But
yeah, no, wonderful. No, excited to have you here with me. You were mentioning about healthcare, and I'm familiar to some extent because my wife is a healthcare practitioner as well. But I'm just keen to hear, I mean, in your view, especially from the practice itself across the different disciplines, it's fast-paced. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many different facets to healthcare in the US. I mean, I think anywhere in the world, but the US particularly, and so many issues and regulatory things we're considering, as well as just getting staff on board. And of course, the biggest challenge right now is turnover. So a lot of groups are seeing 20, 25% turnover. And it's been a really tough time to be in healthcare the last few years, as we all know, with the pandemic. And so it's put a lot of stress on many individuals, and some of whom have said, I don't want to do healthcare at all anymore, or I don't want to do this job in healthcare. And so it's created a lot of transitions, which has made it, I think, even tougher for leaders to really get people on the same page. But it's definitely fast paced. The only constant is change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's quite a few dimensions as well, right? There's obviously the people aspect, but also the frameworks and the processes within the environment in order to apply or follow or adhere. And you mentioned about regulatory frameworks as well, or regulatory demands as well. Adrienne, were you looking at diverse levels of healthcare, as in like, your nurses, nurse practitioners, staff, and as well as leadership, or was it just one segment within that?
Primarily when I'm doing coaching and training now, I'm usually speaking to kind of that leadership level, but what I'm encouraging them to do is, if they're really trying to make changes, they've got to be able to first, understand where they want to go, and be able to craft that vision, that story, to their team, so that their team starts to be excited about it and really buy in. And then once that has happened, then you can really bring your team to the table to be engaged in the process improvement or the changes that you're trying to make. I think a lot of times as leaders, we feel like we have to have so many of the answers ourselves, or we've got to be the one figuring it out. And I really want to shift that to really the more that you can engage your team in understanding where you're going or why something needs to change, the easier it's going to be for them to get excited, be engaged, hopefully stick around longer because they're feel like they're adding value. And then if they're able to be part of actually coming up with those ideas, but also making the changes, they're going to feel even more included, and you're just going to get further faster. So yeah, kind of, I'm often training the leadership kind of levels, but hopefully training them in a way that is really helping them build those better teams and relieving stress and burnout and all of that, because they're able to just be able to have more open dialogue and work better together.
Yeah, and you touched on some of these challenges, such as disengaged teams or turnover. In your expertise and the wisdom that you impart with these leadership teams as well as people on the ground, what's your method or your framework that you apply, or how do you actually bring that alignment is probably the more pertinent question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 3-month coaching program that I work with, and sometimes there's different levels to that. So I can go even deeper with clients that are really looking to create major transformation, but really helping them, first part is, again, getting that clarity around how you function as a leader, what is your kind of true authentic self, where are your strengths, and kind of knowing yourself, and then creating that vision again of where you want to go. Once you've done that, really then it's about creating strong partnerships. And if you're a physician and administrator colleague, or if you've got 2 administrators, or making sure that you're on the same page, because as we all know, in any business, healthcare or otherwise, as soon as you start making changes, the employees are going to kind of play mom and dad off of you. So you've got to be in sync of how you're going to work together and how you're going to resolve issues. So kind of creating that partnership, and then being able to really open. I talk a lot at Carrie Patterson's, crucial conversations and crucial accountability. I share some of those techniques too, to be able to really have those conversations in a way that you're creating accountability, you're setting those clear expectations, but you're addressing performance issues, behavior issues, and really creating a culture of accountability. And then you're engaging the team into that vision and having them really help you. So we use techniques like, brainstorming and, prioritization tools, as well as Lean and Six Sigma tools. I love some of the 5S and spaghetti mapping and waste walk ones, particularly to start with, because they're visual and people can see changes. Because I think that always gets people excited. So once you've got a vision of where you're going, you understand what you need to do in order to establish a culture that's going to continue to, really just get to that high performance level. Then, bringing that team in to say, okay, guys, I don't know all the answers. I don't know where we should really start. I need your help. Like, let's work through this together. Then I think that's really then from there, it's continuously just optimizing, where you're focusing on.
Yeah. So couple of observations. You mentioned, different disciplines and partnerships. So is it safe to say that you look at this, it's wide reaching, in other words, in terms of how you're actually approaching it and whom you're actually interacting with? It's not just one particular functional area, it's actually wide. Okay, good. And the second aspect you mentioned was around culture. So obviously every health, there's, the hospital healthcare practices and so forth, they've got their culture, their values, and the behaviors that come with it, and written values and so forth. How do you kind of align those values and the individual's values and bring them all together?
Yeah,
Or is
absolutely.
that important
Yes,
along the
definitely.
way? Yeah.
It's definitely important. I think, and the more that you can do that, and the more that you're clear as an organization on the culture that you want to have, the easier it's going to be to hire as well. Because hopefully, if you've got a clear vision, it's like if you're, starting to date, right? Like you want to have a clear vision of who you're trying to attract. As an organization, you want to have a clear vision of what type of people you want to attract and which types of ones you don't want to attract. Because if you're really trying to get to that next level, you don't want to have people who are maybe just interested in a job. You want people who are really going to be connected to the work they're doing. They're going to provide great care to the patients. And hopefully they're going to be someone who maybe is even coming to the table really wanting to grow. And a lot of times, not everybody wants to grow and take on a leadership role. And I completely appreciate and respect that. But a lot of people really do want to feel like they're continuing to advance and be supported. And so I'm a big advocate for having really a growth culture. You've got clear expectations, but you're really investing in your team. If you see someone who's really good at something, say, hey, Susan, would you like to perhaps work on this, take this on as a lead, or, lead for this project, and even just to give them some different experiences. So I think it's very clear. You've got to be clear on who you are as an organization, where you're going, what types of behaviors are going to, and attributes of those employees are going to get you there. And then really having a culture where you've got opportunities for open dialogue, and not only around business work, business processes, but I think post-pandemic, it's even more important to make sure that we're allowing space for, the personal life issues that people are going through even more, and really creating that, if someone's having a bad day or seems off, before we jump to the, like, why did you make this mistake again? Having that moment of pause and saying, hey, Stephen, is something going on? This doesn't seem like you, and just really creating an environment where you can support each other. Because I think the stronger the team in that way, the more likely they're going to be able to be successful. So.
Yeah. And as you were just describing all of this, the phrase of mental health just comes into play when you're even talking about pandemic, post-pandemic. I mean, we're still kind of in the remnants of it. Well, it's still going on, but well-being is such an important aspect, because I know within healthcare we're kind of physically there, but regardless, you're experiencing, or people are experiencing, patients coming in, for example, and the pressures and the stress. I'm saying all of this because I'm hearing that from my wife, who's actually experiencing a lot of that. So mental well-being, such a big thing.
Yeah, it is. And I recently left kind of full-time corporate environment in early 2021 and moved into my own business. And so I'm doing the coaching consulting. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also doing Optimize Flow, which is a software venture I'm working on. But I making that transition to, it's not just these like larger corporate entities where we really need to, focus and make sure we've got these environments for mental health, but kind of as an entrepreneurial journey, that has been a whole different, experience for me, kind of going from being part of like bigger organizations and leading bigger teams to leading a much smaller team, or even, being on my own through that. So I think that's really, it really has shown me a lot more about how important it really is to give time and space for yourself as a leader. And then ultimately, so you can give that back to your team to really kind of reflect and, be like, what, this is not going well. How do I recenter?
Yeah.
How do I kind of give myself what I need in that moment is so important.
Adrienne, you're an established leader yourself, a leader in your own right. Are there any stories or experiences that you can share that you haven't actually already said, that comes to your mind that you have led, executed, that's led, that's resulted in a highly positive outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately and unfortunately, we were talking about before we started, I've ended up in a lot of turnaround situations, but I've learned so much. And um, so I think anytime, I've come into a couple environments where we've had kind of negative financial results and operations, where the teams really just weren't working well together. And um, what we went through, which is part of the reason I built my coaching program the way I did, was to really have what ultimately was a day zero conversation, which is today is day zero. Whatever happened in the past is in the past. And here's where we are, and here's where we need to go. And I need you all to be with us and pulling together through that. And so having those conversations in an open, authentic, I think sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable as a leader. We feel like we've gotten this role. People will maybe say, well, maybe you didn't deserve that job, someone else did, or you're really just trying to prove how great you can be in that role, and you're carrying the weight of that. And I think when we are able to shift from feeling like we have to know the answers and be able to solve all the problems to being able to share, we don't know all of it, we want to work together and we need help, that really starts to close that gap between the leader and the team, that nobody really wants to have in the first place. So as one of the practices that I worked with, we went through and really we doubled our revenue. We were able to increase our operating margin substantially, reduce turnover, which is one of the best things I think we can do, because once you have more stability, then you're able to really invest in your people and continue to make changes and to the processes. But we also were able to improve our patient satisfaction results substantially, particularly around their interaction with the physicians, and that communication with the physician, which was, I always found interesting because we actually didn't do anything directly with the physicians, but because we were making all of these changes around the providers, when they were able to be with the patient, they were able to just really sit there and connect with them and focus on them, versus explaining why they were late, or have another test that maybe didn't get done properly and now they've got to have it redone. They're worried about the quality of the information they got for the patient, or those process delays or other issues, and they were able to really just focus, and the patients felt that. And I think that makes such a huge difference in not only being able to really move patients through more quickly and help more patients, but also that quality of care that patient feels they received is so much higher when they feel like they were able to really have that time to connect with their provider. So yeah, lots of great financial and operational results, but I think those things are always amazing. And just being able to mentor other leaders along the way through that process. And really, I felt by the time I left, Duke, we had a really great team. So I knew that when I left, they were going to be fine. They were going to be great, and being able to do that and really kind of work yourself out of a job as a leader. A little terrifying here and there, but ultimately, while we're all here, we want to build those teams that sustain after we're gone. So
and you used the word that I was just going to use right now, which was sustain, and sustainable, because that affecting real change, not just surface level change of, well, you're fixing this process, but you bring that people aspect into the whole mix. And you mentioned about the coaching side of things, so that's in my view, that's huge, especially for a fast-paced environment like healthcare. Adrienne, is there one or two things that you can share that nobody knows about you in your journey as a leader from the beginning?
I think I had many more the fake it till you make it moments than I would have preferred on.
I do the same as well. I have got, I get it.
And I think we still have imposter syndrome. I mean, somebody had asked me the other day, how many stages, how many presentations or speaking things have I done? And I was like, I think over 70 or so. And they're like, oh, you must. And I'm like, but I still get nervous depending on what I'm doing, or just, kind of things randomly hit you. So I think never be afraid to ask for help and input. And if you see someone else being successful, you never know the work that it took to get there. And my hope is through what I do, I can save people time and some of the stress and burnout. But I mean, there were many moments through some of the turnarounds where, you're not feeling very confident. I mean, I was, and I think the other thing that we were mentioning earlier around, as a leader, you're carrying, particularly in healthcare, I think you're carrying a lot of weight for your team and kind of ownership to really help support them both as a team, but then also as individuals, because you really do care. And when you're giving so much of yourself every day at work, it is hard to have anything left for, yourself, your family, or other things that you may have been passionate about before you took that role or entered in this career. And so I think I was definitely guilty of that, guilty of not investing in friendships or passions that I had. And I think that's something that's really important to make sure that you continue to do, because ultimately, when you leave a job for another job, it may feel like you're indispensable. It may feel like those people that are on your team are going to stick with you forever and be, kind of friends for life. But I think you can often find that that's not going to be the case. And so if you give everything you have and sacrifice at your own peril, then when you move into that next role, it can feel rather lonely. And so I think just really making sure that you're prioritizing some of those things that light you up and give you energy, and that you'll continue to enjoy whatever role you're in, I think are so important.
Yeah. Interesting. And any topics or trends that are on your mind these days that impacts healthcare or any other leaders, or
I know.
on.
I mean, the one I have to say is, retention, turnover is just huge right now, as we were talking about. So that one, and I think people are spending a lot of resources on recruitment and getting people in the door, but I think they've got to shift that and really make sure that they've got a culture that keeps people there. So really focusing on that, I think, is really, really key. And, just continuing to look at, outside of change being the only constant in healthcare, the other constant is we know we're not going to get paid more for what we do. And so looking at the costs that it takes for us to provide that care, for each patient, are we doing it in the best way? I think there's so much we can learn from other industries and technologies. I think we're often a little, not a little delayed in healthcare and technology adoption, a lot delayed. And so there's a lot of tools that I think can be really useful in engaging with patients in different ways that don't require them to physically show up and be in our space. And so I think continuing to find those things out there that both help us interact with patients better or just help us do our work better as teams, because I think there's a lot that we can learn from other industries. So
yeah, no, agreed. And change is just happening at an exponential rate, isn't it? So why not adopt some of these not only technologies, but also the business decisions that go with it to make life simpler and less complex.
yes.
Adrienne, tell me, what does a day in the life of Adrienne look like these days, morning to evening?
I was just laughing with I have someone here helping me with some stuff today. So I, primarily work from home unless I'm speaking or engaged with clients or conferences or those kinds of things. But no day is the same. And for me, I like variety. So that was something that's I've always enjoyed in my leadership roles, having variety of locations or people I'm working with. But this morning I had a client intake call. I met with my business coach, because I think we all should have a coach in our lives to help push us and challenge us and hold us accountable. And then I had, another, I was running around doing something, trying to clean up something in between calls. And then, so it's just kind of all over the place, but I enjoy that. And I'm enjoying really getting to know lots of different practices. And one of the things I've learned is that we all have the same problems. It's all about people and process and getting the people on the same page and then optimizing the processes and systems to support them in doing what they're doing. But I do just really enjoy being able to connect and meet with other leaders in the organization. So when I'm not doing client calls or just networking connection calls, I'm also working on a book that will come out in the spring that's called Stop Leading Alone and Start Building Engaged Teams That Lead With You. So I'm working on that. And then the software company, we're getting ready to go out to investors pretty soon for that. And it looks at really monitoring staff workload in a different way. So you can both address performance, but project needs based on the actual specific patients you're going to be seeing and what work it's going to take for that role, so that you can get better utilization, which just helps with the accountability and engagement culture. So, and then I have, 2 kids, a 10 and a 7-year-old. So when I have them, it's, kind of have to be much more flexible, as you said. Flexibility is
Yeah, and family is important as well. Yeah, so it's kind of juggling all of this, isn't it?
yeah, it is. But it wouldn't change anything right now. It's all going well. So
Okay, excellent. Well, we're coming to a close very shortly. Any closing messages or a challenge to other audience groups you want to share here?
yeah, I think maybe for those of you who aren't in healthcare, don't, all of these things I think hopefully resonate with any business leader, small or large. We've all got these same issues of getting our teams engaged. But I think just continue to take, even if it's 30 minutes a month or 30 minutes a week, if you can, to really just reflect on where you are and where you want to go. And if you're making meaningful progress. And one of the things I like to think through too is like, what not to do. Are there things that you can stop doing or get help doing, delegate or automate, just to really make space for those things that you really want to do and you're really adding value in doing, and that goes personally or professionally. So, how can you just make it easier to be at a place where you're really enjoying the majority of what you're working on? So,
yeah, wise words from Adrienne. Thank you very much for being with us, Adrienne, today, and sharing your journey and all these great tips and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode on the topic of building a chief sustainability function, regardless of sector. Stay tuned for our next episode on this and continue to stay on to hear about an exclusive offer for you. Hey, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're now seeing this part of the video also because you consume some of my content, insights, and teachings. Maybe you've been to my LinkedIn page or website or seen other social media ads or listened to my podcast. I'm Stephen Paul, a business and transformational executive coach, strategic advisor, leader, and board member. I've been in diverse roles, corporate executive, entrepreneur, and worked with businesses and firms of all sizes, built and launched businesses, created high-impact boards, and so forth in 4 continents. I get it. I've been there, done that, but what is different is I bring a unique perspective and a playbook. I've helped 100+ business leaders just like you to scale and align their leadership top teams, the board, and overall business for growth. Leaders like Ivana from medium-sized company in the EU who grew 150% and expanded globally in under 5 months. After she started to work with me over facilitated sessions in an initial 3 days, I helped fine-tune their strategy and align their leadership team and board to be a cohesive driving force to achieve their dreams and outcomes. I want to teach you the same thing and more on how to scale and align your leadership team and board so you can increase your business growth and value. Get clarity on what is the next right strategy for you. There are multiple ways we can work with you. Number 1, click the link for a free, non-obligatory 60-minute initial strategic session. Let's get a feel for your dreams, your vision, your challenges, and let me convert that into a route map for you where we can co-develop and co-pilot. Number 2, enroll in an innovative and intuitive digital online course that I have created to help you transform. It's called Unshakable Resilience. It is the ultimate program for individuals and business leaders like you who want to be equipped at a personal and professional level to respond to any form of challenges or in crisis situations and take on opportunities with grit, resilience, and build a mindset of success. In essence, you want to be unshakable, thrive in crisis, take on opportunities in the face of adversity, and build a success mindset. So, click the link below to learn more on how I can personally help you individually and your firm to scale and align your leadership team and business and pivot in a transformational way. And for you to experience this, whatever the challenge you're facing, get in touch with me. Let's discuss, and I will share my insight rapidly to enable your transformation. Click the links below.